Thank you very much, Councillor Ramona Victor, very hard-working councillor of the Siparia Borough Corporation. Good night, UNC. Good night, UNC family, ladies and gentlemen. The political leader of the United National Congress, the Member of Parliament for Siparia, and the leader of the opposition in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bisesa, the best Prime Minister we've seen, and the Prime Minister soon to be again. I want to say a very special thank you to our host, your hardworking Member of Parliament for Oropouche West, in whose constituency we are, and of course to recognize my parliamentary colleague from Couva South, hardworking Rudranath Indar Singh, and of course the Mayor of the Siparia Borough Corporation, His Worship Dudnath Mirhu, and the other councillors of the Siparia Borough Corporation, and indeed councillors of all the other corporations here joining us here tonight. A special welcome again to those who are joining us on the social media and the various platforms. So a very good night, UNC family. So we are here once again tonight at another cottage meeting to do our job as the opposition, as the loyal opposition of Trinidad and Tobago, to call out, to bring to account the government, the actions of the government, or in many instances, the inactions of this government. And tonight, I would just want to speak a little bit about the healthcare sector. You know, my brothers and sisters, just when you think things are getting better, you know, you see something that really touches your heart. And I mean that literally, because, you know, last week, Friday, I opened the papers. It was painful for me to read the headlines, no pun intended. And the headline was "Painful Wait." And this is the headline on the Express, and the subheading is that nursing manager laments a two-year trauma for an ECG test. We'll come back and talk about what that meant. It wasn't the ECG you know about in public health care. And this really speaks to the heart of the issues that we are facing in the health sector in terms of the problems. And you know, when you open the page to go into the story, the next headline is "Horrors in Healthcare." Now, that's a headline that has been bandied about, my brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, for the last 8 years under this government. All that citizens have experienced is horrors in healthcare. So I think the Express newspaper got it right with this subheading. Now, how did this heading come about? This came about because a parliamentary committee, the Joint Select Committee on Public Administration and Social Affairs, decided that one of the biggest social issues we have facing the population is the issue of poor or lacking health care. So they took it upon themselves, and I want to commend that committee and the members of the committee. One of our own MPs, MP Vandana Mohit, is a member of that committee, and they took the initiative of having what was termed a town hall meeting, where they invited members of the public, various stakeholders and so on, to come to the building. There's a building called the Cabildo Building next to the Parliament, to air their views and so on. And of course, this is what came out of this. Now, the irony of this is that this is a senior nurse manager who works in the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex in the NCRHA, and this person has been waiting for 2 years for an echocardiogram. Why is that bad? Well, my brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, the issue of heart disease in Trinidad and Tobago is a big issue. Recently, following the COVID-19 pandemic, we all grew accustomed to the term comorbidity, and of course, many of you would have lost your loved ones, some of your loved ones, your friends, your family, and so on, because of the COVID-19 and because of the comorbidity with heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, and so on. So when we talk about cardiovascular disease, we talk about those with heart conditions, those with high blood pressure. What is the kind of care our citizens get when they access or try to access the health facilities in Trinidad and Tobago under this PNM administration? Well, let's take an example. Well, let's look at the problem. The problem is that of the 12,000 approximately people who die every year in Trinidad, about 3,500 die because of cardiac disease. So it's a big problem. It's a big problem right next to diabetes and other issues, but we are talking about a big problem, and we are talking about deaths. But we also have to understand that in addition to what we doctors call mortality, there's something called morbidity. And the morbidity means that when you suffer a heart attack and you're waiting on an angiogram or you're waiting on some intervention in the health sector, you're not 100%. The machine is not working 100%. The car is working on half tank of fuel. So in addition to you waiting for these, you already cannot perform in terms of supporting your family, you cannot perform in your job. So that is a factor that we have to take into account when we look at waiting times. Now, I did a press release on Friday following this, saying that we should look into the waiting times. And of course, the Honorable Minister, in his usual fashion and form, came out to say that they have no issue with waiting times, they're dealing with waiting times and so on. But you and I know differently, my brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. All of you, many of you here would know of someone who has been waiting for some procedure in the hospital. Before I leave the issue of heart care and cardiac care and all of that, because it's a very important, it's something that needs to be fixed. And this is something that we had started to fix in 2014 thereabouts, when the partnership government was in office under the Prime Minister of Kamala Prasad Visesa. So right after she built the San Fernando Teaching Hospital, brand new 214-bed hospital, and I see our hard-working then chairman of UDICOT here with us, Jolene John, and of course the minister who was responsible for UDICOT at that time, Minister and MP Rudal Monilal. So, and I don't want to digress too much, but this government is taking, they boast about building hospitals, they boast about Point Fortuna and Narima and so on. But I want to put it on the record that, and I'm sure that Senator Jolene John can verify this, that hospital was completed and given back to the population in about 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, 2 to 2.5 years, adding 214 beds. But I'm making that point for a reason, and the reason is this. After we took those patients off the corridors of the hospital into the brand new hospital, the next step was to provide a cardiac catheterization laboratory. What is this facility? It's really not a very expensive facility, but it is a facility that is required when you get your chest pain and you go to a casualty, okay, and a heart attack is suspected. After they do this simple blood test and they do an ECG, the next thing is to try to determine whether there's blockage in your arteries. And that is done by a fairly simple test. In modern times, we'd say fairly simple. It's called an angiogram. What is it? They inject a bit of dye into your vein, they take a special x-ray, and they can tell right away whether there's blockage and whether you need intervention. That's an important test. The results of that test could determine whether you live or die. It's as simple as that. Because if you have severe blockage and it's not treated properly, either by putting in something called a stent or doing something called bypass surgery, then it's just a matter of time. You will die. It's as simple as that. So what is this government doing about this? Now there's one of those labs, one cardiac catheterization lab in the public sector in the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex. That is not functioning optimally, that facility, and the reason for that is that these labs require something called consumables. Every time you do a test, you have to replenish the little tubes, whatever, and so on that are required. I don't want to go into the technical details. They're called catheters and so on. But the bottom line is that you have that, so you don't have enough capacity in the public sector. So that is the reason why in 2014, a tender was sent out to build the cardiac catheterization lab, which was supposed to come on stream. Unfortunately, the government changed, and we were out of office in 2015. But since 2015 to now, 8 years later, you are saying, and this government is telling us that they cannot build this cath lab and have it available to this residents, the population, not only of the south of Trinidad, not only to the SWRHA patients. SWRHA serves 600,000 people, but also to the entire country. So I think, my brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, this is a totally unacceptable situation. Every time the matter has been raised in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, the minister comes with a different excuse. First is the tenders went out, being assessed, and now we are hearing another story about some joint arrangement with some foreign country. But we want to give you the assurance, ladies and gentlemen, that we will not rest until that facility is built in San Fernando Hospital, whether it is under this government or whether it will have to come under the next government under Kamla Prasad Bisesa. So they talk about the Point 14 highway saga in Pimunlal, but you know, this could easily be termed the cardiac cath lab saga. And maybe we might see a report in the Parliament on this. I'm hoping we could see a report in the Parliament on this as to why this is taking so long. But of course, we'll never see that from this government. So, yeah, so I'm here in the car park. Somebody is saying that they built the car park instead, and you're right. You're right. The money that was spent for the car park is something that could have been spent for the cath lab. Yeah? So again, it comes back to the priorities of this government, what they choose to build, but more importantly, what they choose not to build and what services they choose not to offer. But you know, under our watch, we realized that there was limited capacity in the public sector. So what did we do about this? What did Kamla Prasad Bisesa do about this in terms of providing these services which are not available in the public sector? Well, she was instrumental in getting something called the External Patient Program Commission. So under that program, if you had to wait too long, beyond a certain time, I think the waiting time was 3-4 months, depending on the procedure you required, then the government would pay for this program, for your procedure to be outsourced. That program is still there, you know, ladies and gentlemen. Is it being used? Well, let us look at the figures. In the recent budget debate, we looked at the figures for something called the Adult Cardiac Program, which deals with these issues. And in 2021, an allocation of $20 million was made under this program. Only $13.5 million was spent. But you know what is worrying? So this is 2021. The next year in 2022, $20 million was allocated again, but a mere $5 million was expended. So the minister is coming and saying openly in the newspaper that they have the CPP is still functioning, you could apply for it, but yet we are seeing from the figures here that of the allocation that was given for the 20 million, at the last time, only 5 million was spent. And therefore the question has to be asked, is it that less patients want this facility? That can't be true, because we are seeing in the newspaper here that this patient has been waiting for 2 years, right, for this facility. So it has to do with either they're not wanting to spend the money or some sort of inefficiencies in the system. So, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I'll move on a little bit, and I want to come to certain issues that are taking place. I spoke about the San Fernando Teaching Hospital, and one of the problems this government has is in terms of maintaining facilities. They seem to have a real problem with that. And the San Fernando Teaching Hospital is a prime example of how they are deliberately allowing a facility to run down. I use the word deliberately. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's because of incompetence. But I want to speak about the management issues and what I call the issue of square pegs in round holes, which is what is happening at the San Fernando General Hospital in the SWRHA. We have a situation of something like, you know, like musical chairs being played with the incompetent managers. I'm told that when you reach the height of your incompetence in one department, you are moved to a next department. I'll give you an example. The maintenance of the plumbing system in the San Fernando Hospital really has to be dealt with by somebody who's an expert. And I really want to ask here tonight, you know, that is it true that the general manager of operations has effectively shut down what is called the Property Services Department? This is a department that's responsible for maintenance. Is it true that the general manager of operations has since placed an individual without any civil qualifications who doesn't know anything about fixing you know, plumbing and so on in charge of this responsibility? I am told that the person who is now in charge of ensuring that the facility is maintained used to be a kitchen supervisor at the San Fernando Hospital, my brothers and sisters. I really hope this is not true. I hope that this is wrong information. But it goes to show you, it tells you really and truly why the place is falling down. So this is really a situation of musical chairs with incompetent managers. So, my brothers and sisters, I just want to move on to another point, which is at the forefront of all of this. And when we speak of long waiting times, and you would think that the long waiting times is because we don't have enough doctors and nurses. Thank you, Ramona. You would think that the long waiting times is because you don't have enough doctors and nurses in the system. But what is the reality? The reality is that at the current time, you still have over 400 unemployed doctors in the system. This includes many doctors who served this country and served the nation and served the citizens of this country very admirably, took all the risks, faced all the dangers during the COVID-19 pandemic, and they were promised that they would be rehired when the pandemic was over. And the majority of these doctors, I can tell you, are still waiting to be hired in the public sector. So therein lies a big part of our problem in terms of, treating with the human resource needs of this country. And of course, we see how nurses are treated in this country. We have a prime example here of what has happened to a senior nurse. I spoke about this earlier. This is a nurse who is waiting for 2 years to get a procedure. But what about terms and conditions for nurses? We keep hearing, and this has been happening, of foreign countries and foreign recruiters coming to Trinidad and Tobago to take our nurses away, MP Narsing, and for very good reason, because our nurses are not adequately compensated or cared for by this government. And of course, that is something that we know has been happening in all of the sectors. So, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, those are just a few of the issues that I wanted to raise in the health sector. I wanted to stay with the issue of the heart care and the cardiac care, because I think that is a very important issue that touches everybody, touches all of us, affects all of us, if not individually, in terms of family and so on. So, as I close, I want to say that we have to remain very strong. We have a government that is failing in all sectors, but especially so in the health sector. Over 8 years, they have nothing to show. They boast of opening new hospitals. They have opened the Point Fortin Hospital, but the records will show that the staffing in the Point Fortin and the Arima hospitals is still below par. There are still many vacancies. This was the information I had in answer to a question in the Parliament, where I had the figures showing that almost 30% of the establishment was vacant. So it means that there was 30% of positions still to be filled. So, ladies and gentlemen, I implore you to remain strong, to remain focused. This is a government that operates by distraction. They try to distract you. They try to distract you from the truth, from the facts of the matter. And they will continue to do that because they have nothing to show for their performance. I want you to remain strong. I want you to remain focused. As you take a little time off, I want to wish each one of you a happy and a safe holiday season, and to come back rejuvenated in January, when the battle will start again, when we will make all the effort to take back Kamla Prasad Bisesa and United National Congress back into government once more. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.